somebody doesn't believe that I am who I am. Not that I think I'm anything, fantastic, but it's, I try to put myself out there and be honest and interact with people. And the guy said, "Hey, I don't think this guy is Robert Clotworthy." and it got me going. I went, "Well, wait a minute, how can I prove it?" And I thought, it's difficult to prove. And people were saying, "Well, you should have your Twitter account verified." Well, you go to Twitter to try to verify something, it's impossible now.
Yep.
They do not do it. You cannot verify yourself on Twitter. If you try to do it, up will come a message that will say, "Sorry, we can't do it anymore." So I said, what I'm going to do, Reboot, is when I get on the next podcast, next interview, I'm going to mention you. So, Reboot, there you go. I am me.
And if he doesn't think you're you at this point,
and if he still doesn't believe that it's me, well, okay, what can I say?
Does it bother you as much if people are like, "Hey, you kind of sound like Jim Raynor, or you kind of sound like Robert Clotworthy"?
No, I mean, I've been doing this for so long, since I was, professionally since I was 15 years old. So it's kind of nice when somebody does recognize it or be aware of some of the stuff that I've done. And like you said before, as a voiceover actor, it's what's like a pseudo celebrity.
Yeah,
people
that's the term I use.
People know what you've done, but they don't necessarily recognize you. So usually it's something very nice associated with it anyway. I mean, I have to admit that all the people that have approached me as a result of the work that I've done on Starcraft have been incredibly kind, incredibly nice, and how can you not be affected when people says, "Hey, your voice makes me melt," or "Really appreciate you taking the time," or "Great work." I mean, I'm trying to be a humble person, and I honor that opinion that these people have. I don't dismiss it and take it for granted in any way. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I'm one of those. I'm kind of a fan as well. I mean, since I started working in the business at such a young age, I got to work with major stars and people that I was fans of, and I know that what made me the happiest was when those people took a little bit of time and acknowledged me, and it meant a lot. So. My uncle, for example, was an Olympic champion back in the 1950s, and he taught me a lesson. He's, because people would come up to him and ask for autographs, and he'd say, when I sign an autograph, it may not mean a whole heck of a lot to me personally, but it means a lot to the person that I'm giving it to.
Yeah.
So I want to honor that. So on my Twitter account or Facebook fan page, I try to respond to just about everybody that sends me a little shout out, because they've taken the time to send me a nice message. I think it's incumbent upon me to respond and be likewise. And listen, I'm just like everybody else. I just happen to be the voice of Jim Raynor, which is a pretty cool gig.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I have to admit. But, I'm a fan of the game, and, come on, Star Wars? How can you not be a fan of Star Wars? To have anything to do.
So do you play?
I...
You have time to play.
Ask me that.
Yeah, that's true.
People ask me that question, and I answer it this way. I said, if I did play, and I were to play online, I would never tell anybody who I was, because can you imagine the bragging rights of, "Yeah, I just kicked Jim Raynor's ass. This guy can't play. Who the hell does he think he is?" So,
why is Jim Raynor playing Protoss? This makes no sense to me.
Hey, I wouldn't be playing Protoss. No way. I would stick with Terran. You're certainly not going to see me playing Zerg. No way.
I think when you're talking about the accessibility, that's one of the things I had a lot of people asking me when we started promoting. How in the heck did you get Robert Clotworthy to be on your show? And I was like, I tweeted him. I sent him a tweet and said, "Hey, would you by chance have time?" And you were like, "Sure." And I was like, "Oh my God."
Yeah. What you did was ask. That's essentially it.
Right.
I mean, part of the job of, when you're an actor is you need to be accessible to fans. You need to kind of build up a fan base, so to speak. By me going out there and being with the fans, it's it's pleasant for the fans to know that I'm approachable and I'm just like them, and they can talk, and we can communicate, and also it helps me as well. I learn a lot from the people that I interact with. For example, people have told me, why doesn't he say this is Jimmy in the second game? And I thought, well, I guess I didn't say it, did I? So I've kind of I go back to Chris and to Chris Metzen and the people over at Blizzard and say, a lot of fans are asking me to say this. We might want to record a couple of tracks just so we can lay it in there at some point. So it's pleasant in that regard. And plus, I have to admit, it's a little bit self-serving, because as you build up a fan base, as people know who you are, they're going to want to hear you or see you in more stuff. So it's all good. It's all good. So I definitely put myself out there. I'm not going to hide.
Do you get quite a bit? You just mentioned that you went back to them and said, they want me to say this. Do you get a lot of say in your character, or how your character is, or what lines, or?
I would answer that question by saying yes and no. I mean, because they do have dialogue for me to say. When I was in there. When was I in there? Last week. I was in there last week recording some stuff for the game, and I got to tell you, it's the scene that I worked on last week is incredible, truly amazing, and I can't tell you what's happening in it, but it shocked the hell out of me as to what's going on.
Referring to the Old Republic?
No, I was talking about Starcraft at this particular point. I know, and. Since Raynor is a pretty obviously the central character of the Starcraft universe, they write the stuff, but I add a lot to it, because there may be a Raynorism or a way of saying something that I think that Raynor would say as opposed to as written. I mean, you guys are from the South. One half of my family is all from the South. I've got an uncle who lives in Houston, so Raynor's got He's a Southerner, essentially.
He is, without a doubt.
Yes.
There's a way that Southern people, terminology that Southern people would use, and B, there's a way that Southern people say it that's different. Yep. A lot of people don't understand that there's an attitude to the South. It's not just an accent. Yep. So I'll kind of vamp a little bit, and also, to help me get into character, since he is kind of a badass and going through some serious shit. I do often curse as a trick to kind of get me into an emotional state that Raynor might have to be in for a particular scene. Now, somewhere out there in the universe, in fact, they were joking about it last week, that there's some audio warehouse vault somewhere that's got all these expletives that Raynor has said years and sessions, and I hopefully won't see the light of day, because it gets pretty rank, pretty rough.
Maybe a director's cut. We can get a director's cut put out.
Yeah, I got to be somewhat careful, but as an actor, you have to do whatever you need to do to get into the character. Now, as far as Star Wars, it's a different deal, because most of the characters that I'm playing I think I've done, I want to guess, 15, 20 different characters in the game. I can't remember who all of them are.
Wow.
It's obviously not a key central figure that's going to be going through the entire game, but it's going to be characters that, however you go through this game, or you're encountering it at different points. So you have to be somewhat specific as to what you're saying. You might change the phraseology a little bit, or you may ask them, "Hey, listen, let me try this as a different way of saying it," and usually they're fine with it. They make the final decision, and they know that whatever is best is what they're going to use.
So when you're doing this stuff, I mean, first and foremost, I will say one of the cool things, and it kind of lends itself to your talent. Is that Jim Raynor is you. There aren't a lot of voice actors that really make a character them to a point where they can go in the studio and not necessarily change up the lines, but really speak it. This is how the character would say it, and I think that speaks a lot to your acting ability as well, because that's something I've heard a lot in voice actors that just aren't I don't want to say they're bad, but they're not, kind of, I guess, A type. You know what I mean? Like they're not at that pinnacle.
Well, voice acting is, there's a lot of people have misconceptions about what voice acting is. They think that it's just the way that you sound. Most people that get into voiceover, the first thing that you hear is, people always told me that I have a good voice.
Yeah.
Well, you talk to a lot of the professional voiceover people, and very rarely is that something that they heard growing up. That wasn't what motivated them to get into it. It's really kind of weird. I'm thinking, what, did anybody ever tell me that when I was growing up? I said, yeah, I remember having one girlfriend that really kind of dug my voice, but I didn't remember hearing it a lot. So what's more important than just having a good voice? I mean, there's always going to be people that are what we call natural characters that are just kind of quirky and weird, and that's just who they are. So they're going to work just because they're kind of freaky.
Yeah.
But for most of us, the people that are working as professional voice actors are really good actors. A lot of them, most of them have extensive theater training. They're singers. They've done a lot of work on camera. I mean, they're really good actors, because when you go into the voiceover studio, since you can't rely on how you look to convey an emotion or an attitude, it has to be purely by the way that you speak. You have to really understand who you are and be able to really have access to the full gamut of emotions that would be available to a person. And to do that, you really have to do some introspective work. You have to really... I worked with, I didn't work with Billy Wilder, but there's a great quote from Billy Wilder, who, the great director, did Some Like It Hot. He said, when he talked about subtlety, he said, make it obvious. Now, it sounds funny, but you have to be incredibly subtle as a voiceover actor. Oftentimes, we're working very close to the microphone. We may be working at just above a whisper, because we need to have the tonality of our voice needs to be in a lower register. And you can't really do that if you're really speaking quite loudly. But at that point, you really have to be able to access the emotion. You've got to be very subtle, but you've got to be able to not be so subtle that people can't get it, if that makes sense. So it's closest. If I were to compare it as far as acting, whether it's acting on the stage or acting on television or acting in a film or doing voice acting, it's the closest to film acting, where if you see somebody on the big screen and they're really giving you big expressions, it's too much. It's like puts you in the back of your seat because it's too loud, even though all they're doing is just looking at you. The great actors can just give you a simple look, and as the audience, you can sense all the emotion from just that look. You don't need to say the words. Well, for us, we have to say it in the words, but we still have to be incredibly subtle, which means we have to be incredibly honest. And that's the challenge, because a lot of voice actors come in and do way too much. Yeah. And you go, whoa, stop. No, I can't take it.
Yeah, a little overdoing it just a little bit.
Yeah, or overdoing it a lot. And you get that because just a little. I mean, when you think about like when Neil Kaplan, who plays Tychus Finley in the game, is doing Tychus. Now, when you hear it through the speakers, man, it's this big booming voice. Mm-hmm. But for him to get there, I mean, when people ask him to do Tychus, he literally gets right next to their ear and says, hell, it's about time. Real close to them, because he needs to be that resonant with it to make it work. The mechanics of the microphone and the preamps and all that will make it big, but he has for him to convey that, he doesn't have this naturally big, huge. I mean, he's not Tychus Finley, So you got to create something.
Yeah.
And most voice actors don't understand that.
Hey guys, we're back on Imperial State Radio. This is Spike. I'm here with the lovely Charlie. Well, you gonna say hi to the people?
Hey Charlie, come on, say hi.
What? Sorry, hi.
She wasn't paying attention.
Charlie was nipping at the bottle or something. Aren't you over there at Louis Bar having a little
And then of course
a little mezcal or something.
you should know the other voice is Robert Clotworthy, aka Jim Raynor, aka
How you
the man
doing?
of 1,000 voices.
All right. Well, maybe